Number 14. Savannah Henderson. In the United States, prostitution is only legal in a small handful of counties in Nevada. Located within this region is the world-famous Moonlight Bunny Ranch, which has been open for business for decades since 1955. For the most part, it's a safe place for members of the world's oldest profession to carry out their work in peace. But no business is immune to crime, and in early 2023, a fight between two employees led to shots being fired. While responding to the property right outside Carson City, police heard heavy gunfire. They quickly evacuated the building as the employee accused of firing the gunshots retreated to her room and refused to come outside. A 3-hour standoff between crisis negotiators and the suspect, 28-year-old Savannah Henderson, kicked off. Eventually, the woman surrendered. Luckily, nobody was injured in the attack. Henderson was initially charged with 4 counts of being a felon in possession of a weapon, 1 count each of drug possession, discharging a weapon, and obstructing resisting a peace officer. She paid $86,000 in bail money and quickly went onto social media after her release from jail. In a series of tweets, Henderson insisted police got the wrong person and said her booking numbers were skyrocketing since the incident. 8 days after the shooting, she announced that her charges had been dropped altogether. Number 13. Jesus Asensio Molina. During an interview with an Oregon-based news station called KATU in 2018, Ruben Lopez remembered hearing a heated argument from down the street while doing some work on a house in Happy Valley, Oregon. A few minutes later, a medical helicopter came and picked the person up at the property. It turned out a construction worker at an unfinished house nearby had actually attacked his co-worker, Andres Marcelo, with a nail gun, resulting in life-threatening injuries. The victim's brother-in-law, who saw the incident, told KATU that the attack happened without any warning at all. He accused the suspect, 24-year-old Jesus Asensio Molina, of repeatedly firing nails into the victim for no reason. Some of the nails struck him right in the head, but he was reportedly still conscious when taken to the hospital. Luckily, he survived the ordeal. Molina fled the scene and was arrested the next morning during a police manhunt. He was charged with attempted murder, but the case fell off the news radar shortly after it first broke, and the outcome is now unclear. According to authorities, Molina had been deported from the United States 6 years before. Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued a request for Oregon authorities to notify them before letting him go. Records show that he's no longer in local custody, but Clackamas County's policy of non-cooperation most likely means that ICE was never properly informed. Number 12. Viral McDonald's brawl. In a TikTok that went viral back in November 2022, 2 McDonald's employees were seen facing off with one another while holding restaurant equipment in their hands. The clip showed a female worker grabbing one of the metal baskets used for deep frying food, while another picked up a heavy metal trash can. They stood facing each other and yelling profanities while a third employee who was filming stood by and watched. The footage was posted by a user named Renee under the handle @forever.christie. In a follow-up video not long after that night, she said that her cousin, who apparently worked at the restaurant, became frustrated after having to repeatedly fix orders that were being put into the computer system incorrectly. After her anger reached a boiling point, Renee's cousin asked the employee at the register what their problem was. The counter worker responded aggressively, and the fight almost became physical. Thankfully, it didn't, and no one was hurt. Number 11. Craig Armstead. In 2006, Kerry Harris moved from Memphis to Atlanta to start a new, promising job as a quality assurance manager at the Cargill Food Company. As one of the largest privately held corporations in the entire U.S., the company offered her a competitive salary and the potential for future growth, so Kerry looked forward to the many opportunities that came with the job. She quickly became well known among her co-workers as polite and professional, keeping her personal and work lives entirely separate from one another and staying far away from workplace drama. And while most people respected Kerry's desire for privacy, an employee named Craig Armstead seemed overly eager to connect with her. During her first days on the job, he gave her a welcome cake. At first, Kerry wrote Armstead's gesture off as strange but kind. She thanked him for the cake and thought nothing else of it. Kerry soon started to notice that someone was going into her office and moving things around when she wasn't inside. She didn't know who exactly was doing it, but even stranger things began happening over time. One time, she had unexplainable car trouble in the parking lot at work. Of course, Armstead magically showed up and knew exactly how to get the car to start. Sometimes Kerry felt like she was being followed on her drive home. One night, it became clear that someone was actually trailing her. She couldn't tell who it was, so she became terrified. The car finally stopped pursuing her when she pulled into the parking lot of a police station. Over the next few months, Armstead continued to give Kerry flowers and inappropriate gifts, which she politely refused. She told Armstead she didn't date her co-workers, but he kept up the act. Kerry eventually had to report the man to management. Armstead received a written warning and was told not to speak with her unless it was work-related. After doing a little bit of digging, Kerry's friend found out that Armstead had served 5 years in prison back in the 90s for killing his girlfriend. The discovery deeply worried Kerry, but she continued going to work and focusing on her job, hoping Armstead would just leave her alone. 2 years after starting with Cargill, she received a promotion, and perhaps not surprisingly, Armstead congratulated her with an expensive digital organizer. Kerry once again turned down his gift. Not long after that, she and a co-worker found a hidden camera in the woman's bathroom. She took the camera to Human Resources, who later determined that it belonged to Armstead and that it had over 1,000 hours of perverted footage on it. Since it was still recording when Kerry turned it in, Armstead knew she was the one who found it. A few hours later, he brutally stabbed Kerry to death in her office and left the scene. He was quickly arrested. Just like his previous case for killing his girlfriend, Armstead tried to plead insanity, claiming that an evil voice in his head told him to kill Kerry. But the court didn't buy it at all, and he was convicted of murder, aggravated assault, and a weapon charge, along with 18 counts of unlawful eavesdropping and surveillance for the videos on the hidden camera. Armstead was sentenced to life plus 60 years for what he did. Number 10. Amy Bishop. On what seemed like a normal day in 2010, police responded to a call in Huntsville about a shooting at the University of Alabama. Officers arrived and found a horrifying scene in a meeting room where 3 staff members were dead from gunshot wounds. They were discovered along with several other employees, including 2 who were seriously injured. According to witnesses, a biology professor named Amy Bishop stood up and started shooting at her colleagues during a meeting. She acted normal for the first 30 to 40 minutes of the gathering before suddenly pulling out a Ruger handgun and opening fire out of nowhere. To those who lived to tell their story of what happened, it was clear that this was no random act of violence. Bishop pointed and fired at her co-workers in a deliberate manner, carrying out what seemed to be a planned workplace massacre. Thankfully, her gun jammed before she could kill everyone in sight. As Bishop struggled with the firearm, survivors rushed to push her out of the room and block her from coming back in. Police took her into custody within a few minutes after getting to the scene. Bishop's victims were all extremely well-liked members of the academic community. People nobody could ever imagine someone wanting dead. The shooting happened after Bishop failed to reach tenure status at the university, where she had hoped to land a permanent position. She appealed the decision multiple times and was denied time and time again. Shortly before the shooting, she had lost another appeal. The victims had all actually supported Bishop's bid for tenure, but she apparently hated all her colleagues equally at that point and resented their tenure statuses. She had an alarming history of violent outbursts, pointing toward many deadly anger issues. In 1986, she fatally shot her brother during a fight, but avoided charges after the family convinced police it was all a huge accident. In 1994, Bishop and her husband were suspected of mailing pipe bombs to her former lab supervisor at Harvard, where she earned her PhD. This was supposedly revenge for giving her a bad review. 8 years later, she was arrested for assaulting a woman at a restaurant where the victim had taken the last available booster seat for her kid. Bishop demanded that the woman hand over the seat, which she wanted to use for one of her 4 children. When the victim refused, Bishop slugged her right in the face. Her past showed a clear pattern of arrogance, aggression, and terrible reactions when she didn't get her way. She initially tried pleading insanity, but ultimately pleaded guilty and was ordered to serve life in prison without parole opportunities. Number 9. Robert Peterson. After going through a bitter divorce in the early 2000s, Gene Thurnor moved all the way from Nebraska to Land O'Lakes, Florida, where he took a job as an air traffic controller at the St. Pete Clearwater Airport. A few years later, he married one of his co-workers, Juanita, and the couple decided to build a brand new house. Their future looked bright, but an unexpected tragedy struck them in 2006. Shortly after moving into their new home, the couple's co-worker, Robert Peterson, said he was going to stop by with a housewarming gift. He gave the couple a photo album filled with pictures detailing a week-by-week progression of the construction of their house. It was a thoughtful but strange gift, considering Gene and Juanita were unaware Peterson had ever even been to their house. During the visit, Juanita had to leave and run a few errands. When she came home, she found a trail of blood leading to a pile of her husband's bloody clothes. Gene was soon discovered murdered and mutilated at Peterson's home, where Peterson was also found dead. Based on the evidence they found, police concluded that Peterson had shot Gene before deciding to take his own life. An investigation followed, revealing disturbing evidence of a long-standing obsession that eventually drove Peterson to kill. Peterson and Gene met while working together as air traffic controllers in Nebraska. During that time, Peterson showed a somewhat odd interest in befriending Gene and had even asked if he could buy one of Gene's dogs after seeing a photo of them. After transferring to Florida, Gene received a photo of his old apartment in the mail from Peterson, along with a handwritten message basically saying, "Do you see what you left behind?" Gene interpreted the letter as a snarky complaint about leaving the Nebraska location understaffed and didn't think much else of it. 3 months after Gene moved to Florida, Peterson transferred to the same airport. Gene initially wrote his co-worker off as eccentric. He also assumed Peterson had his own reasons for moving to the state and chalked it up to a big coincidence. When Gene and Juanita started dating, they kept their relationship on the low at their job. Peterson discovered the relationship, and the only way he could have realized the two were a couple was by following them or seeing them out together by coincidence. The latter was unlikely. After the couple married and made plans to move into their newly built home, Peterson offered to buy Gene's old house. Despite the disturbingly clingy behavior, the Thurnors were still friendly toward Peterson, writing him off as an odd loner with annoying but harmless tendencies. As it turned out, Peterson had been secretly spying on the Thurnors more than they realized. In fact, he was straight up stalking them, driven by an obsession that bordered a romantic fantasy. His feelings were detailed in a 3-page handwritten note that Juanita found after the murder. In the letter, Peterson said he had been in love with Gene for many years. He also wrote that he was not going to leave Gene's house until certain intimate acts had happened. Based on the letter alone, it's safe to assume that Gene resisted Peterson's unwanted advances, causing his creepy co-worker to finally snap. Sadly, instead of recognizing his need for mental help, Peterson took extreme measures, forcing Gene to pay with his life and leaving behind a trail of devastation for his loved ones. Number 8. Danielle Edwards. Known for her gentle and sweet personality, a 60-year-old horse trainer and farmhand named Fiona Southwell was liked by basically everyone she met. Yet in 2017, someone hated her enough to stab her to death in an uncontrolled fit of rage. Fiona's lifeless body was discovered in a barn at her workplace in northern England, where her killer had violently ambushed her. She had at least 19 stab wounds and multiple defensive wounds, which showed that she fought desperately for her life during her last few moments. The people in Fiona's life found it unimaginable that someone could have wanted her dead, but she unknowingly made an enemy several months earlier when she was hired at her job to replace a troubled farmhand named Danielle Edwards. The farm owners fired Edwards for having a poor attendance record, but he ultimately blamed Fiona for being terminated. He made several creepy posts on social media leading up to the attack, including one stating that he was going to let his demons out to play soon. It was clear based on Edwards' Facebook posts alone that he saw himself as a victim and wanted revenge. One of the saddest aspects of Fiona's murder is that she was planning on leaving the job soon and moving to southern England to start a new chapter in life. Sadly, she never even got the chance. Edwards suffered from multiple intellectual setbacks that limited his career prospects. He also allegedly had substance abuse problems and lacked a stable home environment. But personal struggles are no excuse for killing someone, and after finding evidence connecting him to the crime, police charged him accordingly. A jury later convicted Edwards of murder, which comes with an automatic life sentence in Britain. But judges are allowed to impose a minimum sentence, which means that many convicts see freedom again. Edwards' lawyer practically begged the judge to consider Edwards' developmental issues in deciding his sentence, noting that his client had the mental capabilities of a 9-year-old. After weighing it against the gruesome and unprovoked nature of the crime, the judge sentenced Edwards to a 24-year minimum. Number 7. Michael Stark. 50-year-old Matthew Branning mysteriously vanished in 2021 after he failed to come home from his shift at a manufacturing company in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He was never located, but authorities believe he was killed by his co-worker, Michael Stark. The man was charged with the crime in 2023. According to the district attorney's office, Stark failed to show up to work on the day of Branning's disappearance. Toward the end of the victim's shift, he allegedly called an Uber and got dropped off at the job site where he waited for the victim to leave. He then kidnapped Branning and forced him to take him to a drive-through ATM, where surveillance footage captured Branning withdrawing large amounts of money. In the video, nobody seemed to be in the front passenger seat, but prosecutors claim that a person was partially visible in the back seat. Law enforcement tracked Branning's SUV to parts of central and southern New Jersey. At the same time the vehicle was at a gas station in Cape May, Stark was seen on the store's security cameras. Branning was nowhere to be seen. At some point during these travels, investigators believe Stark killed Branning and got rid of his body. The SUV was eventually found in Virginia. Inside, police saw several drug vials that they do not think belonged to Branning, who was a well-known family man who lived a healthy and law-abiding lifestyle. They believe he was targeted by Stark since he was known to carry large amounts of cash. It's rare for prosecutors to pursue a case without a body, but after 2 years of searching while other evidence stacked up, they believe they had a strong enough case to secure a conviction. Stark is currently being held without bail on murder and kidnapping charges while he awaits the next steps in his case. Number 6. Antoinette Martinez and Cameo Kleins. One morning back in 2014, a rancher spotted the murdered body of a young man on his property in Becker County, Texas. The victim had been shot multiple times and tied up with tape. Based on the evidence found at the scene, police theorized that the victim was abducted and driven to the property. He was shot in the back and passed away face down, indicating that he made a last-ditch effort to escape his killer. Investigators found no cell phone, wallet, or ID near his remains, pointing toward robbery as the most likely motive for the crime. The victim was later identified as 20-year-old Xavier Cordero, who had recently been reported missing by a few of his co-workers. By all accounts, he was an ordinary young man who typically stayed out of trouble. His girlfriend told police that Xavier had left in his car to meet someone late at night and simply never came home. The last known person Xavier had phone contact with, his ex-girlfriend Antoinette Martinez, claimed that he was supposed to come see her on the night of the murder, but never actually showed up. Meanwhile, another young man, Stephen Rendon, went missing and was discovered bound and murdered under suspiciously similar circumstances. Everything started coming together when an aggravated robbery suspect named Cameo Kleins was seen running to Antoinette's apartment. After arresting Cameo, police searched the home and found both Xavier and Stephen's IDs, along with the gun that killed both victims. Realizing the gig was up, Antoinette decided to come clean to law enforcement. Antoinette and Cameo were co-workers at a restaurant who bonded over a shared resentment of their boss, their low wages, and lack of overtime pay. Instead of asking for a raise, they decided to take the money they believed was owed to them. In the first of what turned out to be multiple robberies, Cameo held up the restaurant while Antoinette was still working. She posed as a victim, and they shared in the proceeds afterwards. Not long after that, Antoinette lured Xavier Cordero over to her apartment. He came over and started to undress, thinking they were about to mess around, when Cameo suddenly entered the room and ordered him to hand over his money and valuables. Xavier refused to cooperate. What was meant to be a robbery soon escalated to kidnapping and murder. After realizing that Xavier didn't have as much money on him as they thought he would, Antoinette and Cameo decided to strike again. This time, Antoinette posted a couple of photos online, along with an invitation for men who were looking for a fun time. Stephen Rendon took the bait and became their next victim. Once in custody, the co-workers each claimed they were under the other's spell when they carried out the murders, but footage of the two suspects talking at the police station, unaware that they were being filmed, showed that they both had an equal hand in the crimes. Even more disturbing was the fact that they could be seen laughing and joking about what they'd done. Cameo took a plea deal and admitted to murder in exchange for 2 life sentences and the possibility of parole. Antoinette took her chances on a trial and was found guilty of capital murder. She's now serving life without parole. Number 5. Connor Sturgeon. One morning in 2023, the day was just starting out for employees at an Old National Bank location in Louisville, Kentucky, when one of their co-workers opened fire without warning. Using an AR-15 he had bought just days earlier, 25-year-old Connor Sturgeon killed 5 people and injured 8 others, including a responding police officer who survived after being shot directly in the head. Sturgeon was fatally wounded while exchanging gunfire with law enforcement. After finding his phone in his pocket, police realized he had actually live-streamed the shooting on social media. Although he had a long history of depression, many of those who knew Sturgeon were completely shocked by his actions. Described by a former bank manager as low-key and relaxed, his personality didn't match the image of a mass shooter. But the signs were there, and unfortunately in some cases they were overlooked. A search of his phone and apartment building revealed that Sturgeon had confided in a friend leading up to the crime, stating that he felt suicidal and wanted to kill people. In his last social media post, he wrote, "They won't listen to words or protests. Let's see if they hear this." Police discovered notes on Sturgeon's body stating that one of his goals was to prove how easy it is for a mentally ill person to get a gun in the United States. Law enforcement also reportedly found messages on his phone outlining his plans to commit the massacre. The investigation is still ongoing. So far, authorities have released very limited details about their findings. And while some information about what was going on in Sturgeon's mind has been revealed, the full reasoning behind the slaughter is unclear. Number 4. Christopher Gregory and Jennifer Walter. 18-year-old Christy Robbins got pregnant straight out of high school in 1998. About a year after giving birth, Christy broke up with her baby daddy, Christopher Gregory, got custody of their son, and moved back into her parents' house in Beaumont, Texas. She tried to stay civil for their child's sake, even when Christopher fell behind on child support payments and challenged their custody arrangement in family court. Christopher soon started dating Jennifer Walter, a dancer at the strip club he worked at as a cook and a bouncer. She struggled with addiction and money issues and had 2 kids of her own that she did not have custody over. When Christopher saw Jennifer starting to spiral out of control, he took her into his home and made attempts to help her straighten her life out. On one of Christopher's scheduled weekends with his baby in 1999, Christy told her parents she was going out with her new boyfriend that night and not to wait up for her. The next morning, law enforcement showed up at the family's and told them that Christy was dead. A deputy found her car and body engulfed in flames. The remains were charred beyond recognition, and authorities suspected she was murdered. Christopher seemed shocked and was extremely cooperative. He claimed he was at home with Jennifer that night. When police noticed some suspicious scratches on his chest, the couple claimed it was from getting too rough in the bedroom. During individual questioning, Christopher revealed that Christy planned to pick up their son that night, but never showed up. He showed interrogators his phone log, which listed 3 calls to the victim. Christy's boyfriend told investigators that he and Christy planned to spend the night together, but that she cut things short after getting into some heated phone calls. Her phone record showed not 3 but 12 phone calls between her and Christopher that night. A search of Christopher and Jennifer's apartment revealed a huge blood stain which matched Christy. At that point, Christopher tried to play innocent. He threw Jennifer under the bus by blaming her for Christy's murder, claiming that she had a problem with Christy still being part of their lives. Outraged that Christopher tried to blame her, Jennifer came clean. She said her lover had developed an obsessive rage over his custody battle with Christy. He started talking about wanting to get rid of his child's mother. At first, Jennifer didn't think he was being serious. She realized she was wrong when Christopher lured Christy to their apartment the night of the murder. Jennifer admitted that she helped Christopher kill, dismember, and get rid of the body. It was soon discovered that the police had pulled the couple over for a traffic violation on their way home from parking Christy's SUV and setting it on fire, proving that Christopher was involved despite his constant claims of innocence. After pointing the finger at one another for months, Jennifer and Christopher both pleaded guilty to murder and were sentenced to 45 and 50 years in prison. Number 3. Brittany Norwood. One morning in 2011, the manager of a Lululemon in Bethesda, Maryland, found the store in complete disarray. In a backroom, employee Jana Murray was lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood, with something around her neck. Brittany Norwood, who had closed the store with Murray the night before, was in a nearby bathroom with her hands and feet tied up with zip ties and blood splattered on her face. She seemed to be semi-conscious and was soon in good enough shape to speak with the police. According to Norwood's version of events, she called Murray on the phone a few minutes after closing the store and said she forgot her wallet inside. The two women met up and went back inside together so she could grab it. While they were there, two men in ski masks entered the store and attacked them. After initially treating Norwood as a victim, police eventually started to doubt her version of events. While Murray was attacked viciously, Norwood's injuries were minor and seemed self-inflicted, and the store appeared to be staged to look ransacked. Forensic experts were able to prove that the crime scene did not match up with Norwood's story. Employees at an Apple store next to the Lululemon told police that they overheard a fight between two women on the night of Murray's murder, pointing toward Norwood lying about what really happened. Unfortunately, the Apple employees wrote the noise off as typical drama and didn't call authorities or pursue the situation any further. 3 blocks away from the crime scene, law enforcement located Murray's car. Inside, they found a mixture of her and Norwood's blood. Despite the mounting pile of evidence against her, Norwood stuck to her story, claiming that the men who attacked her and Murray ordered her to move her car. She said they let her go by herself and ordered her to come back in 10 minutes, or else they would track her down and kill her. At this point, Norwood's story had become completely unbelievable, and there was enough evidence to charge her with first-degree murder. At trial, the court heard how Murray caught Norwood trying to steal some leggings while they were closing up the store. After leaving, Murray called the manager to report the discovery. A few minutes later, Norwood called Murray and, as she had already admitted, said that she left her wallet at work. Prosecutors accused Norwood of luring Murray back to the store and killing her, perhaps thinking it would stop the victim from reporting the theft. She made up the story about the masked intruders, hoping to fool the police and continue her life as usual. She was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Number 2. Brian Cooper. At just 21 years old, Alicia Bromfield was a college student with a full-time job and a baby already on the way. Sadly, the child's father wanted no involvement with the baby. Her plate was full, but she embraced all of life's curveballs and looked forward to her future family. In May 2012, she returned to her summer job at a Home Depot store in northern Illinois. It wasn't long before her supervisor there, 36-year-old Brian Cooper, made unwanted romantic advances towards her. When Alicia rejected him, Cooper started harassing her, at times calling her names and even throwing things at her in front of other employees. He also told multiple people that Alicia was his girlfriend, which was obviously not true, and threatened to cut her hours or fire her if she didn't follow his demands. As a single mother-to-be, it was important for Alicia to keep a steady paycheck coming in, so she hesitated to complain about the abuse at first. But Cooper's behavior eventually became unbearable, so she reported him multiple times to upper management. Sadly, the harassment didn't stop, and and Cooper suffered no apparent consequences. In August 2012, he forced Alicia to go to his sister's wedding 4 hours away in Door County, Wisconsin with him. Knowing how he treated her daughter, Alicia's mom begged her not to go to the event. By then, Alicia was already 7 months pregnant, and her loved ones feared not only for her safety, but for the well-being of her unborn child. Sadly, Alicia felt like she had no choice but to attend the wedding. She told her mom she made it clear to Cooper that they were going together as friends. On the morning of the wedding, Alicia contacted her mom again and said she was on her way home. She and Cooper had gotten into a fight after she realized they weren't staying in the same hotel as the wedding party like he promised, which made her feel extremely unsafe. Cooper talked Alicia into staying for the wedding, but she told him she wanted to go straight home the morning after and that they were no longer friends. After returning to their hotel room for the night, Cooper tried making plans with Alicia to watch a movie together the next day. She reminded him that she wanted nothing to do with him, and he flew into an unhinged rage. Cooper strangled Alicia to death. Several hours later, he called 911 using a gas station telephone and reported that he had killed the young woman. He fully admitted that the crime was intentional, but argued at trial that he was too drunk to have acted with intent. During the proceedings, the court heard about how Cooper had been spying on Alicia way more than she knew by filming her in the bathroom at the hotel they were staying at for the wedding. The first trial ended with a hung jury. A jury convicted Cooper on all charges during a second trial, including the murder of Alicia and her baby, and he received 2 life sentences without parole. Number 1. Christopher O'Crowley. In 2015, a 24-year-old woman named Caroline Nozel became the assistant produce manager at a grocery store in Madison, Wisconsin. She was known for her bubbly personality, was extremely well liked among her co-workers, and often went out of her way to make new workers feel welcome to the store. She even befriended Christopher O'Crowley, a meat department employee who was friendly but tended to keep to himself. He gave off strange vibes to some of his co-workers. As Caroline got to know Christopher better, she learned that his life wasn't going that well. He had recently gone through a bad breakup, was homeless for a short period of time, and had a child he didn't get to see. Christopher also didn't have a solid support network. Being the caring person that she was, Caroline offered to be there for her co-worker when he needed her. Other employees were scared that Caroline's kind nature would somehow backfire on her. They had a bad feeling about Chris, and rumors soon started to fly about him flirting with a woman who was way too young for him. Even after being branded as a creep, Caroline was willing to give her new friend the benefit of the doubt. A few weeks later, she had too much to drink during an outing with her work friends. When she asked to be taken home, Chris quickly volunteered for the task. But he wasn't sure where Caroline lived, so he took her to his place instead. The next morning, Caroline couldn't shake the suspicion that Chris may have come onto her when she was drunk the night before. She had no romantic interest in him at all, and it began to dawn on her that he may have misinterpreted her soft spot for him as romantic intentions. Realizing her co-workers were right about something being off, she slowly started to distance herself from Chris. At the same time, he began to cling on to Caroline. He texted her non-stop and hung around her constantly while at work. After initially feeling bad for her socially awkward colleague, Caroline felt overwhelmed and unsafe. She stopped responding to the constant barrage of text messages and tried to avoid Chris at work, but he became obsessive. She finally put her foot down and told Chris to stop smothering her, but that failed to make the harassment stop. Soon, he targeted her friends at work. He was fired in early 2016 after Caroline reported him for inappropriate interactions with a younger female co-worker at the store. On top of already being angry that Caroline had stopped talking to him, Chris blamed her for being terminated. Shortly after being fired, he shot Caroline in the chest 3 times as she left work one night. She died from her injuries, and Chris was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. In 2017, less than a year into his prison sentence, he was discovered dead in his cell. While some might say he managed to escape justice, the most important thing is that he's no longer a danger to society.
(12) Steve Sandvik. In November 2022, an employee of the Mower County Sheriff's Office in southern Minnesota reported their suspicions that Sheriff Steve Sandvik was drunk on the job. Sandvik was also accused of harassment and other questionable conduct. A peace officer who's trained to identify signs of intoxication determined that Sandvik had been drinking that day. The conclusion was reportedly based on the officer's observation of the sheriff's bloodshot eyes, the smell of alcohol, and Sandvik's demeanor and manner of speech. In an email to the Globe, County Administrator Trish Harron said that the sheriff was advised that he'd be pulled over and tested for alcohol if he got behind the wheel. So, someone else drove him home that day, and an investigation was launched 2 days later. A few weeks after the incident, Sandvik took a leave of absence. He told the Globe that he was taking time off for medical reasons and denied being drunk on the job. An independent law firm tasked with carrying out the investigation learned from employees that Sandvik was in a good mood on the day in question, but that several employees noticed he didn't seem like himself. In its findings, the law firm concluded that the misconduct allegations against Sandvik were unsubstantiated, but that he was drunk on the job that day. The report concluded that his condition was triggered by post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of the documents relating to the case are being withheld from the public. Emails obtained by ABC6 included allegations that the sheriff had behaved strangely on at least 2 previous occasions, including during the local Christmas-time Shop with a Cop event. But apparently, these claims were never investigated. In early 2023, County Administrator Harron said that Sandvik underwent the recommended treatment protocols and made tremendous progress on his health, and since then, he's returned to work full-time. Shortly after Harron released the update, ABC6 obtained documents detailing Sandvik's threats to sue Harron for speaking publicly about his condition, treatment, and other personal business. An attorney sent Harron a cease and desist letter on the sheriff's behalf and warned that he'd seek up to $15,000 for each alleged violation of his privacy. So, since then, county representatives have remained tight-lipped on the situation. 11. Paula Valentina Rincon Delgado. While responding to a call about an accident at a car wash in Boca Raton, Florida in December 2022, Palm Beach County deputies found a young woman sitting next to a damaged Toyota Highlander. Identified as 20-year-old Paula Valentina Rincon Delgado, she was an employee at the car wash and had immigrated to the United States from Colombia. And also present at the scene were the business's manager and the owner of the Toyota. Speaking with law enforcement through an interpreter, Delgado explained that she had finished her work shift at around 6 p.m. Then 3 hours later, she met some friends at her home before returning to the car wash, where she took the keys to the Toyota. She drove the vehicle to a nearby gas station for cigarettes and ended up crashing the SUV. Delgado said that the accident happened in Boca Raton, but she couldn't remember exactly where, and that she called her manager right after it happened. According to a report, a deputy noticed the smell of booze while he talked to the young woman. He also noted that her eyes were glassy and red, her speech was slurred, and she was swaying back and forth. The car wash manager told investigators that he received a panicked call from Delgado at about midnight. He said he found her sitting in the damaged vehicle at a parking lot near his business. And after hearing the employee's version of events, the manager drove the Toyota back to the car wash. He then called the Highlander's owner, who'd left the vehicle at the car wash to be serviced, and informed them that the SUV had been involved in an accident. The vehicle's owner told the police that he didn't know Delgado and that he didn't give her permission to drive the Highlander. He called 911 because the crash involved his vehicle, and he wanted to make sure law enforcement didn't think he was the person responsible. Delgado performed poorly on a field sobriety test and refused a breathalyzer. In the end, she was charged with grand theft auto, DUI, leaving the scene of a crash, and driving without a valid license. 10. Linda Bullinger. In March 2014, a 55-year-old nurse from Muncie, Indiana, named Linda Bullinger lost her job at a nursing home for being drunk at work. According to state authorities, her blood alcohol content was 0.258, more than twice the legal limit for driving. Following Bullinger's termination, the Indiana State Board of Nursing revoked her license. But it was hardly her first brush with the law in regards to her alcohol use. Her long list of booze-related offenses began in 2008, when she was suspended from her job at a hospital amid allegations that she showed up at work drunk at 7 a.m. Co-workers reportedly raised the alarm after noticing that Bullinger's eyes were glassy and that her breath smelled like alcohol. A report of the incident quoted Bullinger as saying that she'd been out drinking until 4 a.m. that morning, and so she was charged with drunk driving and resisting law enforcement. In the end, Bullinger came to an agreement with the nursing board that allowed her to keep her license, but unfortunately she was let go from yet another job the following year for showing up to work with alcohol on her breath. In late 2022, Bullinger was on probation for the DUI, as well as reporting to work after drinking and failing to disclose to a new employer that she'd been let go from a previous job for alcohol-related reasons. And as a result, she was fired from another nursing home for allegedly coming to work while drunk. 4 months later, Bullinger experienced her final job loss that led to her license being revoked. And while she likely legitimately struggles with drinking, the system seems to have concluded that she didn't make good use of her chances to get her life back on track. 9. Dr. Jason Lane. In October 2013, a San Diego-based physician and surgeon named Dr. Jason Lane was so drunk at work that he collapsed and was taken to the emergency room. He had a blood alcohol content of 0.39, nearly 5 times the legal limit, and was fired from his job a few days later. According to a formal complaint filed by the California Medical Board, Lane had argued with his wife about his drinking the night before he fell at work. He drank 2 bottles of wine before bed, then woke up during the night and drank 8 more ounces of the beverage. Knowing that his drinking had gotten out of control, Lane completed a 7-day detox and then entered a 30-day rehab program. After that, he finished a 6-week outpatient treatment. He then continued focusing on his sobriety and mental health while attending AA meetings 5 to 6 times a week. In the meantime, he underwent exhaustive proceedings in an attempt to keep his medical license. He admitted that his binge drinking tendencies dated back to his college years and that the habit worsened after he served in the military and began struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. Lane's drinking was reportedly at its worst when he collapsed on the job, and by then he was drinking at least 1 bottle of wine daily and experiencing withdrawal symptoms throughout his workday. But he denied ever drinking on the job, even though he admitted to showing up at work drunk. The medical board eventually decided to give Lane a second chance at his career under a set of extremely strict rules. He was put on probation for 10 years, which includes regular drug and alcohol testing, routine mental health treatment and screenings, active participation in a 12-step program, and being under the supervision of another doctor. And as another consequence, Lane was also barred from overseeing physicians' assistants. 8. William T. Marshall. When an aging former judge's relatives filed legal petitions for guardianship over his finances and assets in 2019, it opened up a huge can of worms that led to calls for thousands of cases he ruled on to be reviewed. According to the lawsuit, William T. Marshall's finances were left in shambles due to his advanced alcoholism after he retired from his position in Scioto County, Ohio in 2018. The plaintiffs alleged that Marshall had been hospitalized multiple times due to his drinking and argued that he was unable to avoid drinking on his own due to the magnitude of his addiction. The suit also claimed that any continued drinking at that point could potentially be fatal to the ailing senior. Marshall's family accused him of showing up to work drunk countless times and often failing to go to work due to his drinking over his 15-year career. During that time, he presided over more than 2,700 cases that ended with prison sentences or other forms of court supervision. The alcohol-related allegations called into question whether these cases should be reviewed for signs that intoxication affected Marshall's rulings. The judge's history showed plenty of signs that his lifestyle was problematic. Back in 2013, he was convicted of driving under the influence after wrecking his car while drunk behind the wheel. And what's even more disturbing is that at least 3 women implicated Marshall for his alleged involvement in a large-scale human trafficking operation that a former city councilman is currently facing charges in connection with. Marshall denied the trafficking allegations and fought back against his family's accusations. Then, in 2020, he tried, unsuccessfully, to have his law license reinstated. 7. Dr. Robert Gerlich. When a hygiene dentist in Long Island, New York, noticed that her boss reeked of booze and had administered Novocaine to the wrong side of a patient's mouth one day in early 2013, she did the right thing and mentioned her suspicions to someone who could help. In a statement to police, Kimberly Curtis said that when she pointed out Dr. Robert Gerlich's Novocaine mistake, he simply ordered for the other side of the patient's mouth to be injected, leaving their entire mouth numb. Curtis also claimed that the dentist had shown up to work drunk in the past, and on one occasion, she called Dr. Gerlich's wife because he was allegedly so intoxicated that he could barely stand on his own. During the more recent incident involving the anesthesia, Curtis texted a co-worker who called the police. She said she was especially nervous after seeing her boss use a drill that requires an extremely steady hand. After noticing that something seemed off about Gerlich's behavior, Curtis began paying more attention to his movements. Then, just moments after she saw him drinking out of a squeeze bottle, she said he walked past her emitting a strong alcohol odor. She claimed that she looked inside the bottle when she got a chance and that she was sure it was filled with vodka. According to Suffolk County Police, Gerlich initially denied being drunk, but admitted to having a few beers during lunch. But while riding in the back of a squad car on his way to deal with his arrest, he allegedly confessed to sipping vodka all day. And as a result, he was charged with misdemeanor reckless endangerment. It was a disappointing situation, considering Gerlich's good reputation up until that point. And while it's unclear exactly what happened with the case, it appears as though it was sorted out at some point, and that he's still practicing dentistry today. 6. Jessica Sue Proctor. Like many school districts throughout the US, the Iredell-Statesville School District in North Carolina has been affected by the ongoing national teacher shortage. So, to alleviate the problem, the district utilized the services of a company called the Stepping Stones Group, which helps to fill staffing voids by providing temporary teachers. In early 2023, school officials received a complaint accusing a newly hired temporary teacher of possibly being drunk on the job. The tipster accused 41-year-old Jessica Sue Proctor of smelling like alcohol during her second day on the job. Proctor was pulled from the classroom and brought down to the school's office, where it was determined that she was, in fact, intoxicated. She also allegedly had an empty bottle of wine and an insulated cup full of wine in her possession. Needless to say, the new job didn't work out. In a statement, the school district applauded the employee who came forward and reported Proctor's behavior after they noticed that something was off. And in the end, the terminated teacher was charged with misdemeanor counts of alcohol possession on a school campus and child neglect. 5. Lacey Freese. A 39-year-old nurse from Sioux County, Iowa, named Lacey Freese was accused of being drunk at work in 2022, amid reports that she was behaving strangely and using profanity. According to the complaint, Free appeared to be having trouble concentrating and was even seen dozing off on the job. 2 weeks later, Freese was accused of buying alcohol during her shift, even though she was acting normal that day. She was sent home for this, but she was supposedly seen buying booze again later that same night. The Iowa Board of Nursing charged Freese with excessive use of alcohol in a manner that might impair a nurse's ability to practice the profession with reasonable skill and safety. She then agreed to surrender her license. According to the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Freese had no previous disciplinary incidents on her record in the 7 years she spent working at the hospital. But she did have 3 DUI convictions from 2014, 2015, and 2016, along with a misdemeanor theft conviction for allegedly stealing $240 from a taxi driver in 2016. Then, in early 2023, she was charged with DUI yet again, after she was reportedly found slumped over in her car in a Target parking lot. 4. Kevin McCorvey. While transporting a dialysis patient to treatment in Fairburn, Georgia in 2021, an ambulance suddenly veered off the shoulder of the road and fell into a ditch. The patient, 66-year-old Wilton Thomason Jr., was unrestrained in the back of the ambulance and died in the crash. Police accused the ambulance driver, 34-year-old Kevin McCorvey, and his co-worker of trying to call an Uber to flee the scene. But after smelling alcohol on McCorvey's breath, a responding officer stopped the ambulance workers from leaving the scene and got the Georgia State Patrol involved. The suspect allegedly admitted to smoking pot, taking stimulants, and drinking a beer while driving. And as a result, he was charged with DUI, second-degree homicide by vehicle, failure to maintain lane, and possession of an open container. In June of 2023, authorities announced that McCorvey's case may go to trial in October. In another case of an ambulance driver being accused of operating under the influence, an emergency helicopter pilot named Aaron Fouquet was pulled over on his way to work in early 2023 after an officer saw him crossing the yellow center line. The incident happened in Elbert County, Colorado. According to the local sheriff's department, Fouquet was in his flight suit at the time of the traffic stop. He had a blood alcohol level of 0.08, the legal limit in most states, and was taken into custody on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. Shortly after the arrest, Fouquet resigned from his job. The case sparked questions about what would have happened if he'd made it to work that day. In a statement, his employer reassured the public that it tests its employees for drugs and alcohol at a higher rate than federal law required, and that there were measures in place to detect and prevent a drunk pilot from operating an aircraft. 3. Jeffrey Pupilli. During a random drug and alcohol screening in mid-2023, a 9-year veteran of the Terre Haute, Indiana Police Department named Jeffrey Pupilli allegedly tested positive when he was subjected to a breath alcohol test. The 33-year-old was transported to police headquarters and placed in a conference room, where a lieutenant reportedly observed the smell of booze and noticed that Pupilli's eyes seemed bloodshot. Meanwhile, the officer's superiors analyzed the software in his patrol car that records the driver's speed and other habits. And the findings revealed that the car hit speeds as high as 93 miles per hour during Pupilli's drive to work that day. According to a probable cause document, Pupilli's blood alcohol content initially tested at 0.596, more than 7 times the legal limit. He was well into the range that puts a person at risk of coma or death, which starts at 0.4. Pupilli took a second test, which came out at 0.5, and 15 minutes later, a third test showed a BAC of 0.446. By the time police obtained a warrant to draw the officer's blood 4 hours later, his BAC was at 0.125. He was placed on administrative leave and charged with operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated and endangering a person, as well as operating a vehicle with alcohol concentration equivalent to at least 0.08, but less than 0.15. Then, several weeks after his arrest, Pupilli resigned from the department. But at the moment, his criminal case is ongoing. 2. Angela Hercock. After noticing signs that their co-worker was intoxicated on the clock one day in 2017, employees at a daycare in West Des Moines, Iowa called the police. A responding officer observed that 43-year-old Angela Hercock's eyes were bloodshot and she was unable to stand on her own. There was also a strong alcohol odor coming from her water bottle. According to local station KCCI, the tipsy childcare worker admitted to keeping vodka in a water bottle and drinking it throughout her workday. Hercock had a blood alcohol content of 0.37, nearly 5 times the legal limit in Iowa, and a high enough level to put someone in the hospital. As a consequence, she was promptly fired from her job and arrested for child endangerment and public intoxication. Then, just when it appeared as though Hercock was on the road to putting the situation behind her, she showed up drunk to her sentencing with a BAC of 0.178. So, she was taken back to jail pending the outcome of a new substance abuse valuation. 1. Tricia Nelson. Usually, when police are called to a fast food restaurant in the middle of the night, there's a problem with a customer or the location's been targeted in a crime. But it was an employee who was accused of wrongdoing when law enforcement responded to a Taco Bell restaurant in Evansville, Indiana in April 2023. According to a report, officers observed two of the restaurant's employees, 35-year-old Trisha Nelson and an individual whose name was withheld, yelling at a car in the drive-thru. Other workers said that Nelson and the other suspect were found drinking in the bathroom while the drive-thru became backed up during a rush. After watching the security footage and seeing that something unusual was going on, the manager called the restaurant and asked for an explanation. And when she learned that Nelson and another worker were in the bathroom drinking, she gave the go-ahead to fire the pair. While confronting Nelson outside, officers noticed the distinct odor of alcohol. She allegedly tried walking away from the scene multiple times, but eventually consented to a breathalyzer and blew a 0.208, which is more than 2.5 times the legal blood alcohol limit in Indiana. Nelson was also accused of becoming combative with police while being taken into custody. According to an arrest affidavit, she tried pulling away and kicking one officer and elbowed another one in the face as they loaded her into the transport van. As a result, she was charged with battery of an officer, public intoxication, disorderly conduct, and resisting law enforcement.
8. Two-story fall. In April 2023, a construction worker in Pittsburgh faced a harrowing accident at the site of the new First National Bank Tower, located in the 600 block of Washington Place. The incident occurred at around 8:30 a.m. when the worker fell from the 26th floor to the 24th floor. The outcome was a series of injuries, including an open fracture in his leg, abdominal discomfort, and injuries to his shoulder and elbow. Swift action was taken by Pittsburgh Public Safety, who promptly responded to the emergency call. On their arrival at the scene, they discovered the injured worker in a surprisingly alert state. Despite the severity of his injuries, he was then carefully transported to the hospital for immediate medical attention. Rescuing the injured worker presented its own set of challenges. Medics resorted to using a crane on the construction site, showcasing the dedication and resourcefulness of the rescue team. First National Bank, the organization overseeing the construction project, issued a statement expressing their concern for the injured worker. The worker was identified as an employee of the Century Steel Erectors, a subcontractor involved in the construction project. The bank conveyed its well wishes for the worker's speedy recovery and assured that they were closely coordinating with the worker's direct employer to stay updated on his progress. Additionally, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation into the incident. Their presence on the worksite is aimed at reviewing safety protocols and ensuring that all necessary precautions are in place to prevent such accidents in the future. First National Bank pledged full cooperation with OSHA's efforts to enhance workplace safety. This unfortunate incident showcases the risks that construction workers face daily and underscores the importance of rigorous safety measures on construction sites. 7. Bus driver versus White Claw. In an incident that unfolded in Smithtown, New York in October 2023, a bus driver found herself in hot water for allegedly consuming an alcoholic beverage while transporting students home from school. The severity of the situation underscores the potential risks to children on the bus. Amal Hanna, the bus driver in question, sat down for an emotional interview in which she explained her side of the story. She claimed that the entire incident was a result of a major misunderstanding. On the day in question, as she was heading to work, Hannah reached for what she believed to be a regular seltzer left in the fridge by her roommate. However, there was an unexpected twist. Hannah stated that she had no knowledge that the seltzer she picked up was a White Claw, an alcoholic beverage. Her troubles tasting due to ongoing chemotherapy treatment further complicated the matter, as she couldn't discern any alcohol content in the drink. It was only when someone noticed the hard seltzer in her cup holder on the bus that Hannah was immediately removed from her position. The We Transport Bus Company responded to the incident by releasing a statement, emphasizing the complete unacceptability of the alleged conduct. As a result, the driver was promptly relieved of her duties, and thankfully, the police in Suffolk County determined that Hannah genuinely didn't realize she was consuming an alcoholic beverage, leading to the decision not to file charges against her. Numerous parents came forward to vouch for Hannah's character and professionalism. With 15 years of experience as a bus driver, she had built a reputation for being meticulous, punctual, and for treating the children she transported as if they were her own. This incident shows how even well-intentioned individuals can find themselves in challenging situations, and it highlights the potential consequences of alcohol consumption while responsible for the safety of young passengers. 6. Smallpox. In October 2019, a lab worker in San Diego found herself in a precarious situation after refusing the smallpox vaccination. While conducting an experiment on mice, the 26-year-old accidentally pricked her finger with a needle containing the vaccinia virus, which is a genetically modified strain related to smallpox. The incident occurred when she was attempting to inject the vaccinia virus into the tail of a mouse. Realizing her mistake, the lab worker promptly informed her supervisor and sought medical care at the emergency department. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, published an account of the accident in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, shedding light on the consequences of the accidental exposure. On day 10, the worker's finger had already become swollen, and by day 12, her symptoms had escalated, leading to treatment for fever, swollen lymph nodes, pain, and a worsening of the infection in her finger. Medical intervention included the administration of vaccinia antibodies and tecovirimat, a virus inhibitor designed to reduce her fever and inflammation. But despite these efforts, the situation took a grim turn, as the tip of her finger began to turn black and rot. It would take 3 long months for the infection to fully clear up. The decision to decline the smallpox vaccination was attributed to her concerns about potential side effects. The report highlights that she hadn't fully appreciated the extent of infection risk associated with the vaccinia virus when the vaccination was initially offered. As a result of the incident, the lab worker took a 4-month leave of absence from her job to ensure that she didn't inadvertently spread the infection to others. 5. Instant incineration. Tragedy struck in Mapleton, Illinois in November 2022, when a 39-year-old worker, only on his 9th day of employment at a Caterpillar-operated foundry, lost his life in a horrific incident. The worker fell into a bag of molten iron, an accident described by the Department of Labor as immediately incinerating him. Federal investigators swiftly launched an inquiry and found that inadequate safety measures may have played a role in this unfortunate fatality. They proposed a fine of $145,027 for Caterpillar, the operator of the foundry. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, a division of the Department of Labor, determined that the foundry exposed employees to serious fall hazards. Despite their work being in close proximity to deep ceramic containers of molten iron heated to extreme temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,093 degrees Celsius, the proper precautions weren't in place to prevent such a disaster. Caterpillar was given just 15 days to decide how they would respond to these proposed penalties. They could either ensure compliance with the safety regulations, request an informal conference with OSHA, or challenge the investigation's findings. OSHA's regional administrator in Chicago, Bill Donovan, highlighted the avoidable nature of the tragedy, noting that Caterpillar's responsibility to have the required safety protections in place was a crucial factor. He emphasized that Caterpillar, as one of the nation's largest foundries, should be well aware of industry regulations designed to safeguard workers operating in hazardous environments. Caterpillar, in response, expressed condolences for the deceased worker's family, friends, and colleagues, underlining their commitment to prioritizing safety across their global locations. So, in an effort to mend what was done, the company affirmed its intent to engage with OSHA to find a suitable resolution to the review. 4. One too many mistakes. In late March 2021, a startling audit conducted in Tarrant County, Texas, revealed numerous mistakes in the work of Dr. Mark Kraus, a suspended deputy medical examiner who'd been in service since 1981. This audit, conducted by Tarrant County Medical Examiner Dr. Nizam Pirwani, not only uncovered Kraus's errors, but was itself found to contain inaccuracies. One of the most concerning revelations was that Kraus made a total of 59 mistakes in 40 homicide cases he handled. This extraordinary number of errors prompted his suspension from performing autopsies in homicide cases. His troubles began when he mistakenly identified a bullet wound as a surgical incision, leading to the exhumation of the victim's body. The subsequent audit further questioned his capabilities, and as a result, Kraus was placed on administrative leave in March 2021. The potential ramifications of Kraus's errors are vast, with hundreds of cases in Tarrant County potentially affected. Defense attorneys were tasked with investigating each case to determine if issues need to be raised in court. An independent review of Kraus's work was initiated by the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, led by John Krausot. Tarrant County prosecutors rescued themselves from the investigation, but provided the audit to defense attorneys. While the audit generally upheld Kraus's determinations of the cause and manner of death in most cases, it criticized him for consistently failing to request or review ambulance reports and hospital records. The audit also found instances where Kraus failed to confirm a victim's identity through fingerprint or other scientific means, and neglected to collect blood samples. 2 particular cases were described as egregious due to the severity of Kraus's errors. In one case, he failed to notice a second bullet during an autopsy, resulting in an incorrect determination of the number of gunshot wounds the victim suffered. And in another case, the audit revealed that Kraus inappropriately classified the cause of death as homicide without conducting a full autopsy or recovering a bullet. The audit itself wasn't immune to mistakes, containing errors in case details and some discrepancies in information. However, Dr. Pirwani, who conducted the audit, downplayed these errors as typographical mistakes. The Tarrant County District Attorney's Office has expressed its commitment to providing amended audit findings to defense attorneys, but didn't directly address whether they have confidence in the audit. Dr. Kraus, who remains unreachable, has left many questioning the integrity of homicide investigations and the pursuit of justice in Tarrant County. 3. Severed leg. In early November 2022, a peculiar workplace accident in St. Paul, Minnesota, resulted in a man suffering a severe leg injury. The incident unfolded just before noon when the police and medics responded to reports of a potential pedestrian vehicle collision at the intersection of Rice Street and Geranium Avenue West, located near the North End neighborhood. And to their surprise, they discovered it was a cable installation work site. At the time of the incident, workers had a cable set up across the road, permitting vehicles to drive over it. Unfortunately, though, something went awry when the cable somehow got entangled with a passing vehicle. Tragically, the cable ensnared a nearby worker, tightly wrapping it around his leg. As a consequence, the cable forcefully pulled him onto the street, where he collided with the side of a pickup truck. The tension in the wire was so great that it severed his leg around the knee, resulting in a grievous injury. Swift action was taken, and the injured man was promptly transported to Regions Hospital. The good news is that his injury, though undoubtedly severe, wasn't deemed life-threatening. Authorities launched an investigation to delve into the circumstances surrounding this unusual and unfortunate incident. Workplace safety remains a critical concern, and incidents like this remind us of the importance of stringent safety protocols to prevent accidents and protect workers' well-being. 2. Maple Springs Mine Accident. In early October 2023, a tragic accident at a Somerset County mine claimed the life of a mining company employee. The incident occurred at the Maple Springs mine near Hallsopple, and the accident involved a shuttle car. LCT Energy, the mining company, confirmed that the man became trapped between the shuttle car and an interior wall of the mine. The work crew underground at the time consisted of 4 miners who also happened to be licensed emergency medical technicians. They assessed the injured worker's condition and led the effort to bring him to the surface. But unfortunately, despite their best efforts, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim was identified as 37-year-old Brendan Frederick by Somerset County Coroner Cullen Swank, who determined the cause of death to be accidental, citing multiple blunt force injuries. LCT Energy expressed deep sadness over the tragic death and extended their condolences to the affected family and friends. The incident prompted the State Department of Environmental Protection to order a temporary halt to operations in the affected section of the Conemaugh Township mine. Inspectors are currently interviewing mine personnel and initiating an underground investigation to determine if corrective measures are required. Both the State Department of Environmental Protection and the Federal Mine Safety and Health Administration are conducting separate but coordinated investigations into the incident to ascertain the circumstances that led to this unfortunate accident. Notably, this mine had faced a previous tragedy in March 2022, when a scoop operator, Paul Springer, lost his life after being struck by a falling boulder. Federal investigators had determined that the shape and lack of visible cracks in the boulder had made it difficult for miners to predict the risk of it falling. Consequently, the company modified its roof control plan to enhance safety. 1. Shoplifting. In a tragic incident that happened in June 2010 in Fort Worth, Texas, a Walmart worker's brave attempt to thwart a shoplifter's theft of a $328 television ended in a devastating head injury, ultimately resulting in his passing. Bruce Florence, the dedicated Walmart employee, made a fateful decision to intervene when he noticed a shoplifter attempting to steal the TV. But sadly, this act of courage led to dire consequences. As Florence tried to apprehend the shoplifter and recover the stolen television, the shoplifter retaliated by knocking him to the hard concrete floor. Florence remained conscious and able to communicate while receiving medical care. But his condition took a turn for the worse on Father's Day, marking the beginning of a heartbreaking chapter for his family. Bruce Florence's wife, Kathy Florence, expressed her husband's unwavering commitment to his job, even in the face of significant personal challenges. He was unwell and was awaiting a liver transplant, but he was still determined to work diligently to provide for their family. Kathy rightly pointed out that the shoplifter, a 37-year-old individual, should have been trying to get a job instead of engaging in theft. William Allen Kennedy, the suspected shoplifter, was arrested by Fort Worth police and was believed to be connected to several thefts in the area. The grief and anger in the Florence family were palpable. Kathy expressed a desire for the harshest punishment for Kennedy, saying, "I hope they give him the electric chair." Bruce's 14-year-old daughter, Kelsey, echoed the sentiment, believing that the thief had taken her father's life. Bruce Florence left behind a family of 3 children and 2 stepchildren. He was described as an outstanding Walmart associate who never treated anyone as a stranger, and he was a beloved friend to many. Despite his church duties as a deacon and his commitment to working multiple jobs to support his family, Florence's tragic and untimely passing serves as a poignant reminder of the price he paid for his dedication. William Allen Kennedy faced initial charges of aggravated robbery, but police contemplated adding a murder charge pending the results of the autopsy. This heartbreaking incident underscores the risks faced by employees who, driven by a strong work ethic, attempt to thwart criminal activity and protect their workplace. But it also raises questions about the balance between personal safety and corporate responsibility in such situations. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.